Welcome to the Real Business Lifetime Lessons podcast, where Carolina business leaders get real about growth, grit, and leadership. I'm Carol Willard, and this is Keys to Growth. Insight from real estate professionals who are building businesses, shaping communities, and unlocking success.
Today's guest is Devan Carroll, a Clemson-educated entrepreneur who left corporate life to build a fast-moving real estate investing business, wholesaling nationwide, while also running local flips, new constructions, and rentals. Devan now leads a largely virtual 12-person team and runs multiple deals each month, blending a hustle-first mindset with systems and mentorship to scale quickly. Devan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.
You've had a really unique path into real estate, leaving corporate life and jumping into wholesaling. What was the turning point that made you say, I'm going all in?
Yes, it was, dating even back at my time at Clemson, my major was, they had a new major called business management with an emphasis in entrepreneurship, which I enrolled in and kind of always had that entrepreneur bug. My parents are entrepreneurs. My aunt and uncle are entrepreneurs. My other aunt and uncle are entrepreneurs, the same as my grandfather as well. So all different businesses, ironically enough. I'd say it's always kind of been in my blood. I'm not a straight A student. I was the C guy, maybe even a D guy, whatever I needed to pass. And I was always delegating my work in school, right? I was subcontracting in school, if you will. But at Clemson, a buddy of mine and I started the entrepreneurship club, where essentially started out very, very small. A lot of, our local friends from the fraternity, lacrosse team, whatever it be, we'd meet once a month and we'd have an alumni come in who is an entrepreneur and he'd pretty much tell his story. Throughout that, I met this one guy in particular who became a mentor of mine. His name is Steve Edwards. Does a ton of real estate development. He's a pilot. He's an author. He's an Ironman. He's all these cool things. And I'm like, I want to be like Steve. So started meeting with Steve after Clemson. I didn't have any money, so I had to go into the corporate world. Started doing accounting and finance recruiting, placing CPAs, placing financial analysts, staff accountants, all that stuff, which wasn't too fun. But what I realized as a recruiter, is I could do my job 100% correct. Everything's great, find the perfect candidate, and then that candidate could just not accept it, or the company may not love them, or they might not be hiring anymore. That was really difficult for me to just understand that I'm putting everything on the line, and there's not even a guarantee that it's going to happen, even if I do my job right. Steve gave me some books. Really, the main book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, and I started reading a lot, and what I noticed was a lot of the common denominator in all these wealth building books was real estate, real estate, real estate, right? Lawyers are becoming millionaires through real estate. Doctors are becoming millionaires through real estate, right? So I figured, hey, if I get in real estate now at 22 and I just stay somewhat consistent, for 25 years, by the time I'm 50, 55, I'll be worth something, right? So that's, when I determined and I found that, real estate is the route that I wanted to go. From there, it was a little tough. So I had to talk to Steve. He's like, you really have three options, right? You can go and you can become an agent, get your license, hang with a brokerage, and really just specify the investment side. Finding deals for investors, listing flips for investors. You're going to be surrounded by investors and learn how they finance a deal, how they run the project, how they run their numbers, etc. Or you can, pay for proximity, pay for a mentorship, an actual coaching program, which is pricey, but, just shorten the learning curve as you're paying for proximity there. And then the last option was to just bootstrap it on YouTube University. I had about $11,000 to my name. And I started, going around looking at coaching platforms and whatnot. And I ended up spending $10,000 of the $11,000 that I had to my name on a course. So the next 3-4 months, I was, going to my recruiting role, getting home, walking the dog, eating dinner, and then just grinding modules from 8 p.m. to midnight every night. And then after 3 months, I picked my head up. I was like, all right, I have a ton of knowledge. I know how to underwrite. I know how to do all these things, but I've never made an offer. I don't have any money to market, and I've never done a deal. So what do I do now? And then that's when I determined that I'm just, I'm doing the recruiting just to pay rent, right? To live, you got to live. And then I was like, all right, how can I find a job in real estate, whether it's property management, an agent, whatever it be, that has some sort of base salary? Because 99% of real estate roles are commission-based only. So I started networking around, the mentorship group that I was a part of forced me to go ahead and network within my community. I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina, a great local real estate investor group that does meetups 3 days out of the month. So I started going to that, started putting my face out there. It was uncomfortable. You got to network. I'm the young guy who doesn't know anything. I really have much to offer. All I have to offer is my effort, right? So long story short, I ended up finding this guy, Nate, And he, bought into me. I guess I sold him on myself. And the job he was advertising was a lead manager, 10% commission based only. And I said, hey, I would love to come work with you, but I can't do commission based only. I have to pay rent. I have to do this. So luckily he was able to work with me. He gave me, what I needed in a month, and obviously reduced commission. That's really when it all changed. And that's what gave me the comfortability to exit the corporate world and then make that jump into the real estate investing industry.
When you started wholesaling, what was the steepest learning curve, and how did you push through it?
Cold calling for sure. In my recruiting role, I had numbers. I had to make 20 calls a day, 2 G2s, which was a soft interview, and then 2 interviews a day. And that wasn't tough cold calling, right? You're trying to help the person out, where as a lead manager, I was given a list of 20,000 records that was pulled probably 2 years prior. So it was an ice cold list, high equity absentee owner. And I was just told to make 150 calls a day. My goal was to set appointments for Nate, who I was working for. And cold calling, definitely the steepest learning curve. I mean, you're sitting alone in a room and people are saying, F you, don't call me, scammer, get a real job, all these terrible things. So you got to have tough skin, right? You got to understand that it's a numbers game at the end of the day. I think my connection rate was about 8%. So if I called 100 people, I would actually get 8 people on the phone. And that does include the people that would tell me to F off. So definitely some tough skin there. And it's hard to really just stay motivated in that role with just counting just a ton of consistent no's. But one no gets you closer to one yes.
A lot of people dream about working for themselves, but the reality looks different. What's been the biggest mindset shift for you as a business owner versus an employee?
I think that's a great question. And I would say in my current role, I love a quote. It's by Alex Hormozy, and it's basically just stating that the biggest bottleneck in any business is the entrepreneur himself, right? My business can only be as successful as I am. It's not that I sit in the back seat and it just happens, right? I built it and it just happens. Unfortunately, it's not like that, right? As an entrepreneur, if there's a problem, bills need to be paid, it's you. You're always the one that needs to go ahead and take the call on Saturday morning, or go drive 2 hours to a property at 8 p.m. because the door is unlocked and the sink is overflowing or something. People think it's time freedom and financial freedom, but it is the complete opposite of that. I think if anything, you are the number one employee. You still are an employee to your business, especially right now while I'm, building this business. I think, year 10, it might be a little bit different, but as of now and for, the next few years, it's the grind, and I'm very motivated. Obviously there's a lot of upside of owning your own business. Yeah, you'll make more money, but if you can't balance the stress, it's just simply not worth it. And I coach wholesaling, and I know a lot of people that have done it and try to do their own thing, and they don't even last, 2 months. You got to have a tough skin. You got to have the long-term vision, and you just have to there's no problems, only solutions. You got to have that mindset. And I also just think for me, a big thing was just the fear of being average, if you will, right? If I want to, I was born into a very middle-class family, went on family vacations, was going on the boat as a young kid, doing all these really extravagant things. And if I want to go ahead and maintain that lifestyle and give that lifestyle to my children, I need to go ahead and be above average. And along with that comes additional responsibility and a much, much harder work ethic.
I feel like with the way that things have changed, like that middle class lifestyle, what it looked like 20 years ago, has drastically changed what an income should look like in the 2020s. So yeah, you definitely have to grind harder to maintain that. But it is so much fun and totally worth it at the end of the day.
The wins are great, but the losses they hurt.
So you've built a team of about a dozen people, mostly virtual. How did you figure out what to keep on your plate and what to delegate?
Yeah, so I do a really cool exercise. One of my mentors gave it to me, but it's called a time audit. So essentially what you do, and the goal is to, identify what it is that you're going to delegate, right? So on an Excel sheet, it's all templated and everything. And if anybody does want a copy, definitely you'll leave my contact info. They can reach out and I'll share it with you. But essentially what you do is you list out every activity you do, right? On a daily and weekly basis, how many hours a day or a week you are doing that activity. And then you determine percentage of revenue, right? How much revenue does this activity generate for the business? And then number 2, what is an average rate of someone that can do this, right? So for me, pulling data, going through Excel sheets, organizing data, that takes me 3 hours, but I can hire someone and pay them $13 an hour to do that, where my time, right, is worth a lot more than that, because I can do a ton of other things, right? And identifying the highest revenue generating activities that I'm doing and doubling down on those, right? So if I say transaction coordination, I can pay someone less than me to do, and it's taking a lot of my time. Data management as well, sales management, comping, anything like that. I'll make a list, say it adds up to 10 hours. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to list these activities over here and say, okay, who can I hire to fill this back? And then right there, say it comes out to 10 hours, I get 10 hours back in my week. Okay, me on the phones talking to sellers, making offers is the highest revenue generating activity. I just got 10 hours back in my week to go ahead and make, X amount more offers, which is going to yield X amount more revenue. So I know that that's a very strict answer, but that's how I do it. That's how I identify how to delegate. And it's just a matter of digitizing everything, duplicating the process and just having, a strict training outline so that if my employees do have questions, they go there first instead of coming to me, right? I want people that are, resourceful, that are going to try and solve their problem first before coming to me. That's what I think.
As a leader, what does good leadership look like to you when most of your team isn't in the same city?
Definitely tough building a virtual business, especially in an industry with very high turnover. I can proudly say in my business, I started my own business about 21 months ago. So I'm coming up on 2 years now, and I have 12 employees, and I have never posted a job ad. Everyone has either been referred to me or has approached me through social media. I have 3 of my employees are friends that I went to college with. And then a lot of the other ones are referrals from, great friends that I've had in the industry. Other ones are just people that, reached out through social media and, they made it through the interview process and they're still on the team. What I think is we have a very young group. This wholesale industry is very nitty gritty. It's probably one of the most lucrative ways for, a younger individual to make a good bit of money, which is why we do it, because that then fuels our flips and our new construction, which you need a lot of capital to do, right? So I got to find go-getters, right? People that are like-minded, people that maybe want to start their own business one day, because the most important role in my operation is acquisitions, right? If we don't have acquisitions, we don't have TC or dispositions or any deals, right? So for me, it's just building a culture, right? I focus on my team's professional development, but more importantly, their personal development. Every Monday on our team meeting, we have a goal tracker. In the beginning of the year, each of my guys, it's 5 main goals, 2 professional and 3 personal, right? So that they understand that I care about them as a person. I don't just care what numbers I put on the board for me, right? So, for example, one of my employees, Jack, wants to buy a house this year. Okay, Jack, what price range, what do you need to make this year to go ahead and buy you and your fiance a house this year? And then just reverse engineer that goal, get back into it, and then we identify our weekly must. What 3 activities do you need to do weekly to, put yourself in that position to succeed and, buy this house at the end of the year? And it's, work out at 6 a.m., eat healthy, self-development, meditation. We all have our own, weekly musts. And on top of that is a weekly goal, right? Hey, I want to get 2 contracts this week. Hey, I want to run a half marathon this week. Hey, I want to, go spend time with my family this weekend. Like that can be a goal as well. And we also hold each other accountable with that, because there are punishments, and the punishments would be 100 burpees, 100 push-ups a day. And we do send videos of us doing the 100 push-ups a day or the burpee like that. And number one, it obviously tells them that I care more about their personal growth and their development growth, not just their professional development. And it's also fun. Makes it fun. We can laugh at each other. We sometimes will pick each other's punishments or rewards and things like that. Or it just creates a good culture as well. But at the end of the day, it has to be like-minded individuals and people that just have the right mindset of no problems, only solutions. And they're vertically integrated in the business to go ahead and make an income, or be set up to start their own business if they wish to do so.
You sound like an amazing leader, because I'm very, very grateful and lucky to have a leader who is concerned about our personal growth as well. But I feel like that's hard to find nowadays, is someone who legitimately cares about you outside of like working goals. So that's an incredible quality that you have, and your
Thank you.
team is very lucky.
Thank you.
So walk us through your deal machine from lead to close. What does that process look like for you? And what part of that process do you think is your real competitive advantage?
At the end of the day, for those of you who don't really understand what wholesaling is, We are not real estate agents. We do not list properties on the market. We do not buy on the market. What we do is we target distressed properties, right? Properties that have been vacant, properties that have been abandoned, but we also target motivated sellers, someone who is in foreclosure, maybe lost their job and they're about to get foreclosed on. We'll come in, I bought in a ton of houses the day before auction, right? Whereas if I didn't buy that house, this person is foreclosed on, they're kicked out of their house, their credit's screwed, and X, Y, and Z. So we do a direct to seller marketing campaign, and there's a ton of different marketing strategies. I'm looking into all of them because we'll be on here for 3 hours. But essentially, inbound marketing, which would be a PPC and SEO, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Twitter ads, whatever it be. People that are filling out a form and asking for an offer. And then we have our outbound marketing, which would be cold call, SMS. Those are people that we are, pulling data based off high equity, based off, credit card, missed credit card payments, things like that, that we can indicate that, hey, this person may have some motivation to sell and they just don't want to list on the market, or they're in some fear of denial. A lot of these people are in denial. So what makes us so valuable is our sales process and the comfortability, because your average person buys and sells a home 2 times in their life. And 99% of the United States, their largest asset is the home that they live in, right? So majority of the money to their name is their equity in the house. So we get people to sell their largest asset, which is something they only will do 1 or 2 times in their life, over the phone, right? To do that, you have to be very trustworthy. You have to be very credible. You have to be knowledgeable, and you have to understand the process, not only on how to transact real estate and how to, run numbers, but more importantly, how to connect with individuals over the phone, how to make them feel comfortable, and how to make it a win-win situation for them as a seller and us as the buyer as well. And it amazes me all the time, the people that we've helped, people that have been in. We had this one guy last month who, no family, no nothing. He's, 75 years old, totally by himself. He was been in assisted living. He had a stroke when he was grocery shopping, hadn't been back to his house in 3 months. And there was no way he could go back to his house because now he's handicapped. So what we did was we went and we hired a company and we moved all his stuff into storage, got him his money, sold his car, sold a lot of his furniture, gave that money back to him. Without us, I'm sure another company like us would have come along, but we were the company that helped him out. And just seeing that, we do help a ton of people out of very stressful situations that they don't know what to do is really the icing on the cake of this business.
And it sounds unique. Like, I've never heard of a company doing this. But also, before I talked to you, I didn't know that there was wholesaling in real estate. So scaling quickly can be risky. What guardrails have you put in place to keep your business sustainable?
Yeah, scaling is definitely tough, especially in a business like this. What I think is most important, which is something that I learned the hard way, is to always make sure that you have at least 3 months of reserves, right? So if you're spending $90K a month, that's your overhead. You should have $90K that is just sitting in its own place, earning its 3%, whatever, you don't touch it, that's for doomsday. So I think that is super, super important. And then I also think just understanding your margins, right? When I went to scale last year, I realized that my margins weren't in the position that I needed. It wasn't scalable at that point, right? So I had to make some changes in-house with, ad spend, with salaries, with benefits, things along those lines to then make it make sense. Also, in real estate specific, the time of the market is crucial, right? If you're trying to scale during the holiday season, if you're trying to scale in the middle of the summer when kids are out of school and everyone's wanting to go to the beach, probably not the best time. Or if it's a seller's market rather than a buyer's market, a lot of things that go into effect. Also, what marketing sources and what is your cash conversion cycle per marketing source? How soon you're going to see that return? What's your cost per lead? For us, there's so much stuff that does go into scaling and identifying when the best time to scale is and what the best strategy to scale is at that time or whatever it be. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it for wholesaling specific. As for flipping, it's access to capital, right? So raising private money, having multiple contractors, having agents along the lines like that, and just having a bunch of bird dogs, people that posting on social media, letting people know what you do. No one can help you with something they don't know about, right? So if I'm looking to buy a house in Amarillo, Texas, I can post on social media, target Amarillo, Texas, and hey, somebody might come up and raise their hand and say, hey, Devin, I saw your video. I'm interested in selling.
I feel like that's kind of like having that network of people to like share your post is awesome. And I guess, does it kind of help you to not have to like go out there and use advertising dollars or like geocaching or?
At times it does. I mean, at the end of the day, our value is that we like our direct to seller marketing campaign. That is what's worth money and that is what's sellable. as well as our CRM, but it's only as successful as the people that are running it, right? So if I just duplicated my marketing process and gave it to someone who's never done this before, they're not going to find success, right? So it's really important to just be different, make yourself different, and getting as many leads as you can. I mean, every 52 leads we get turns into a contract, and that's across the board. So it's a numbers game at the end of the day.
Yes, it is. Who are the key relationships? Like we've already talked about your mentor, but partners or even competitors that have made the biggest difference in your journey so far?
Number one is definitely going to be Nate Hirschberg, which is who I worked for 2.5 years, told me everything. He's the one that gave me a base when he wasn't advertising for a base. He's the one that bought into me and gave me a chance at this industry. Worked for him for 2.5 years, had a very, very, very seamless, very mutual split with him. He was excited for me to start my own business. I had some stuff that I had to take care of, hiring my replacement, training the team, making sure that everything was good before I left. Without him, I would probably still be in that recruiting role or an agent or something. I definitely wouldn't be where I am now. So shout out to Nate. He's changed a lot for me, and we're still great friends. We get dinner once a month, and we work on some deals together as well. On top of that, and just in real estate, it's lenders. Using other people's money is super important. So I have my hard money lending connections, which are small hedge funds, which those are at a higher rate. Those are pretty much disposable. They're never going to run out of capital. And then I have my private money lenders where I can get a much better rate, but they're going to have a cap in their capital. Not everybody has an endless piggy bank to lend from. So those are really important because at the end of the day, he who has the money is usually who's going to win. So for me, I don't have the money, but I have the deals, right? So he who has the deals needs the money. As long as I can find a deal, I will never have an issue raising money for it. So that again has allowed us to scale relatively quickly, having a proven model and having investors that know, like, and trust us as well.
So you're very transparent on social media about your wins and your losses and even your team's wins and losses. How has that authenticity played into building trust and credibility in this space?
I feel like the majority of my social media is targeting lenders mainly and acquiring new talent, as well as people that are interested that want to get into real estate as well, kind of just showing people what it actually looks like. All the gurus and all the people with the millions of followers that talk about real estate, they're not going to post the ugly side of it, the deal that they lost 40K on, the deal that they lost 100K on, or anything like that. The reason that I like to be transparent and express that is because it is the reality of it. And I'm very transparent with my team. They know our margins. They know what each other's make. They know what I spend. And I'm just an open book. And I think that at the end of the day, honesty is always going to prevail. But I think it's just important to be honest, and people understand that not every deal is going to work out, and all you can do is learn from that and tighten your buy box, tighten your criteria, and focus on the deals that do make you money. Because the first real estate quote that really stuck with me is that, hey, I was trying to force a deal, and it was, hey, sometimes the best deal is the one that you don't do, especially on the first one.
So a lot of your deals are out of state. How do you build trust with sellers and buyers that you may never meet face to face?
Last year, we did deals in, I believe it was 31 different states. Of those 31 states, I have only been to 7 of them, which is crazy, right? We buy these houses, again, over the phone. It's the power of virtual sales, which is why I think that is what makes us proprietary and, super, super unique, is that we can get people to sell their homes over the phone and feel comfortable to do so. So number one, a lot of it comes to just sales strategy, sales training, which I learned from Nate, which I've now taught to my team, and well as we've hired a bunch of sales trainer as well. We do NEPQ sales process, which is from Cole Miner. It's neurological emotional questioning is what it stands for. So it's really focusing on the issue and matching that with a solution, and then, going ahead and making it a win-win. If property is 20 minutes from me or 10 hours from me, we're still going to work that lead over the phone. Eventually I will go in person, but my guys can get it under contract over the phone. And if I'm not available to go, or I do have some other guys in Charleston now that can go locally, but in our other markets, we have some agents that are boots on the ground there's some sellers that will need to sign in person. They don't trust DocuSign or anything, which we totally understand. That's actually better for us. We get a wet signature rather than an e-sign. And what we do is our closing attorneys, they're welcome to go in their office, or we do have local agents, boots on the ground in each market that we work with on a per deal basis. They provide us with buyers, they provide us with pictures, their numbers, anything like that. So just making it a win-win for them, and you have to give them a piece of the pie, right, at the end of the day. And I think that's what's really helped me is that all my guys, their commission structure is higher than industry standard. For me, I'm not trying to get rich quick and get out. I'm trying to grow a business over the long haul. So I'm always going to make it worth someone's time, and I'm going to add value first prior to asking for a favor or anything like that.
So have you built relationships with people industry lateral, with your closing attorneys and stuff like that? Like, is that something that you work on a consistent basis? And like, how has that worked out for you?
Yeah, 100%. What I've been able to do with a few of my attorneys is, hey, if I bring you 5 deals in a month, can you give me a discount on closing costs? Because part of our offer is that we're going to cover our closing costs and attorney fees. If it's retail first-time client, those are about $3,000 to $5,000, depending on stamps and all that stuff, title and everything, whatever needs to be done. I have worked out some deals on that, which definitely saving $1,000 here, $1,000 there, times 5 over 12 months is about 50 grand. So it definitely does add up. But at the end of the day, you gotta respect the attorney's craft, because some deals are super easy. It takes them 2 minutes, and then other deals, it takes them 20 hours, 4 different employees, and it's a nightmare, and they're going above and beyond for us, which we appreciate. That's something that I'll ask for down the line once I've proven my consistent deal flow and once we've developed a good relationship and they like working with me and I like working with them. It's usually a conversation I'll have. But at the end of the day, just hiring the professional that is trained to do that duty and not trying to do it yourself is super important.
So what do you see as unique about doing business in the Carolinas compared to other markets?
So obviously I'm a little bit biased just because it's real estate specific, and I'm from New Jersey, so I'm a Yankee down here. I love the coastal Carolinas. Obviously went to school at Clemson, which is in South Carolina as well. But for being from the north and just seeing how many people move to the Carolinas and Florida as well, these markets for real estate specific are some of the best. I also love secondary markets. I'm not in Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, those big markets, because the just barrier to entry is so tough with the big dollars, with the hedge funds and whatnot. Personally, I love secondary markets, Charleston, a Savannah, a Jacksonville, a Wilmington. I mean, those are very desirable areas, right? They're on the coast. It's where the people up north that have been freezing their butt off for the past 15 years want to get to. So knowing that there's always going to be buyers there and there's always going to be sellers there is super important for us. And essentially inventory is tough here. It's housing prices are crazy here in Charleston specifically. So just knowing that if you can get a deal, you're going to make money on it and it is going to sell is very, very.
Charleston is bustling right now. It's one of the largest growing markets in South Carolina, right?
Yeah, that it is. That and Greenville, one of the two.
So how do you balance the fast pace of national deals and making sure you're still plugged in and giving back to your local community?
Great question. So mainly what we do locally, I do fix and flips. I do new construction as well. So that's what we do here locally, right? I'm not going to flip in Texas or, Arizona or anywhere that I can't, get to within really 45 minutes, under an hour. So obviously here locally, right, we're gentrifying communities, right? We're going ahead and, fixing up distressed properties that have been an eyesore to the neighborhood, which increases the value, which then, helps the neighbors out because it makes their house worth more. And it also helps the city out because that property is now at a higher value. Therefore, their taxes that they're charging are going to be higher as well. And then that's why, the tax code is incentivized for real estate investors, because we do so much for the local community and we're doing work that the government would have to do if there weren't people like us, right? If this wasn't an industry, the government would have to do that, or the banks, right? So that, number one, and then all of our donations are done locally here as well, whether it be to MUSC. I do a lot of endurance sports as well, so I always donate to charities for all that stuff, and then all that stuff goes here locally as well.
The nonprofits that I have worked with, they're here local to Columbia. Down at Christmas time, they collect toys for MUSC's Children's Hospital because that's where their child was when they were having a ton of problems. And MUSC is just, I could go on and on about how great they are, especially for the kids.
Exactly. It's life-changing. I have a lot of friends that work in that hospital too, so it's great to hear their stories, and they see my name donating. It's cool. It all comes full circle.
What's a leadership lesson you wished you'd learned sooner?
It's just accountability and being laser focused. I think with me having hired friends and having hired pre-existing relationships is It's tough to hold them accountable. It's even tougher to have those tough conversations, if you will. So for me as a leader, especially in a performance-based role, these guys are only making money if they perform. And that can only last so long. Number one, for them financially, but number two, for me as a leader, because I know there's someone better that I could put in that seat. So being insanely, almost annoyingly specific on the daily expectations, the weekly expectations, and the monthly expectations. And if you do not meet those expectations, what then happens? And go from there, right? After 2 weeks without a contract, you then are put on a performance plan. That performance plan lasts 1 week. You have certain goals to hit within that week. If you do not hit those goals, immediate termination. If you hit those goals, then there's 2 more goals you have to hit, and then you're off the pit, and then you're back to square one, right? So just non-negotiables. I'm going to work with you. If a guy's out for 2 weeks because of something that he couldn't control, I'm going to work with him. But at the end of the day, removing emotion from the situation and just trusting the numbers and trusting what all has happened is super important, and just treating everybody the same, right? Hey, this is the standard that this business is held at. I'm held to it. Jack's held to it. Connor's held to it. Tony's held to it. Everybody is doing this. If it doesn't work out, I wish you the best of luck. I'll take care of you. But being super clear on expectations is definitely most important.
Most definitely. So a lot of sellers are transitioning phases, downsizing, relocating, facing hardships. Do you ever find yourself stepping into conversations about the bigger life planning with those clients?
Percent, yeah. I mean, the best list that we buy from is high equity absentee owner, which indicates that they're landlords, right? That these are rental properties. And my favorite avatar to buy from is a veteran, because there's so many veterans right now who are 60, 70 years old. And granted, the VA loan, which back then was a great product, still is, but it's not as good as it was then. These guys would be stationed in Fort Knox, go buy a house. They'd then get stationed in Fort Johnson, and then buy another house. Next thing you know, they have 10 houses in 10 different states that they haven't been to in 10 years. And obviously they're rental properties, right? So they're going to need some work. The tenants are going to have to be moved, et cetera. What we'll do is we buy portfolios. We'll buy 1 property at a time, 5 at a time, 10 at a time from a lot of those veterans. And what a lot of them don't realize is that, okay, they're going to sell this asset. Say that they sell 5 properties, 100K each, no debt on any of it. They walk away with 500,000. They're then going to get a big capital gains tax bill from Uncle Sam, right? So what we do is we'll help them with a 1031 exchange, which allows them to avoid that capital gains tax, rolling it into another asset. We've helped them identify the asset. Obviously, we're compensated on that as well, but you're saving this guy a ton of money, and that's why they're working with us in the first place. And then there's also other ways to do, if they don't want another rental property, they don't want to buy another asset, we can do a seller financing structure where we're paying them as, income and not capital gains. So therefore they're not taxed on that. Granted, they're becoming the bank in that situation, and we don't have to go to a lender negotiating terms with them directly. Again, another way for them to, look out for them to protect their money. That's what we do most often, but a lot of these people need to sell a house ASAP. They need to move for a job, and we'll help find them an apartment for the time being, and then help them find a house as well, because real estate, there's just so many different ways that you can get involved, add value. So if we see opportunity to not just make money on the buy, but also help them down the line, we'll definitely do so. And even if we can't make money and it's someone in a tough situation, we're still going to go above and beyond and help them.
If you had to give other entrepreneurs one piece of advice about building not just wealth, but peace of mind, what would that be?
Peace of mind just comes from completion and just, having a purpose-driven role. I feel like I was guilty of it probably about 6-7 months ago, where I didn't know what my duties were on a daily basis. It's just wherever I was called is where I was going. Right? There was no structure in my day. I wasn't time blocking. Because even me as the entrepreneur, I still need to get better, right? My business is only going to get as good as I am, right? So if I'm not continuing to grow, my business isn't growing, right? New exit strategies, a new asset class, a new marketing strategy, anything like that. So continuing to adapt and just understanding your why and being reminded of your why. Mine's, on my whiteboard. I look at it every day. Hasn't changed. When it does change, it'll be changed. I'm just understanding that we chose this. Entrepreneurship is not fun, but at the end of the day, we chose this, and it puts you in the 1%. But do you have what it takes, and do you have the fight to make it worth it and really stay within that 1%? Peace of mind, I honestly don't think there really will be peace of mind for if I'm being honest. Maybe other businesses where they're a lot more hands off, but real estate specific with turnover and just changing markets, interest rates, national economy, I think it's quite tough to be to have that true peace of mind. And I think that if you catch yourself with sitting in the back seat, relaxing, don't get used to it because if you're not growing, the more uncomfortable you're off you'll be is kind of my mindset for now. I'm obviously a young motivated entrepreneur, so that stuff can wait.
So what is your why?
So my why is my parents work super, super hard. They own a family business up in New Jersey. They do luxury swimming pools, right? So backyard swimming pools, gunite on the ocean. They've done a lot of pools for famous people, Bon Jovi, Eli Manning, people like New Jersey. So and up in New Jersey, it's a seasonal business. We grew up in a very, very nice town, if you will. I think my dad is probably one of the only blue collar guys there. My dad doesn't even carry a wallet around. We go to dinner, my mom has her wallet. Super blue collar, he's got dirt on his shirt. He's still hopping in the holes at 55 years old, digging trenches, if guys don't show up and things along those lines. So just seeing, how hard they work, obviously it's a seasonal business there. So they have 7 to 8 months to go ahead and really make their money. So the summer months right now, 7 days a week, 12 to 14-hour days, is what they're working, and that's what they need to do. They didn't need to do that, but they chose to do that to give me and my 3 siblings the life that they felt that we deserve. So point of that, kind of coming full circle on that, is that that's a very tough business to sell. They'll never get money that the business is actually worth, because when they sell the business, they won't be in the business, right? So for me, my main why is to go ahead and retire my parents, take care of them. Done an amazing job, paid for my college, paid for my siblings' college, and we've always gotten what we wanted every Christmas. A lot of times too much, more than we needed. My mom's a big spender, but taking care of them and, making sure that when the time's coming soon where they gotta retire. So just making sure that when that time does come, that financially they're taken care of.
So if our listeners want to connect with you or learn more from you, where can they connect with you?
Any social media platform. My name, Devan Carroll on Facebook. Instagram is dev_Carroll16. And then my Instagram for the business is Deventum, Deventum REI. Yeah, Deventum REI. Just a lot of stuff, current projects, a little behind the scenes stuff as well, future job opportunities, lending opportunities, things like that. Reach out there. And yeah, look forward to meeting some of the folks.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Devan. I really appreciate you taking your time to talk with our listeners and educate them and spending a little bit of time with me this afternoon.
Of course, Carol. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on Keys to Growth, part of the Real Business Lifetime Lessons podcast, hosted by Lifetime Insurance Agency, LLC. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future insights from Carolina real estate leaders. And if you're a Carolina resident looking for health, life, or Medicare insurance guidance, our team is here to help.